Welcome to Gamecock Pod Live.
For the next 3 to 4 years, I'll be committed to the University of Gamecock.
This is Rodgers again to the 25, 20, 15, 10. Rodgers scores!
Jackie Bradley Jr. delivers for the Gamecocks.
Lost it up, looking for Kelly. Touchdown! Can you believe it?
South Carolina is sending shockwaves through the SEC.
Plays it in at the buzzer! That's a win! Unbelievable! I don't believe it!
And now, live from Studio 54 of the Gamecock Pod Studios, here's the Cockfather himself, Keith Alsep.
All right, everybody, welcome into Gamecock Pod Live for October the 25th, episode number 1334, brought to you by BP Skinner Clothiers, located in the heart of the Vista in Columbia. And as you can see, I am wearing a very lovely Holderness and Bourne pullover from BP Skinner Clothiers, proud sponsor of Gamecock Pod Live. Go down and check them out at BP Skinner. They built their reputation on the perfect fit of trust, quality, service, and style. Brent Skinner has been building relationships and serving his clients for over 17 years. He is a graduate of the University of South Carolina. This is a family-owned and operated business, a Gamecock family-owned and operated business. He opened BP Skinner in 2012, now proud to be located in the heart of Columbia's historic Vista. Brent believes in providing clients with the best quality clothing at a fair price. His attention to detail and his commitment to ensuring his customers look and feel their absolute best set him apart in the marketplace as one of the best clothiers in the industry. Let Brent put his reliable experience in custom menswear to work for you. Maybe you're into CrossFit, you're extremely athletic, and you go and buy something off the shelf, off the rack. Maybe you're a 48 because your shoulders are broad, your arms are big, your waist is small, but the pants don't fit. The jacket is too wide. Maybe you're extremely tall or long. Everybody is not made out for clothes right off the rack. Brent Skinner does a great job. He's got a tremendous selection, whether it's shirts, sport coats, suits, shoes, neckties, whatever the case may be. A fine line of Gamecock design clothing as well. Go to BP Skinner Clothiers, located in the heart of the Vista, right there on Gervais Street in downtown Columbia. All right, let's dive into our news notes and headlines in just a couple of minutes. We will be joined by my good friend from thebigspur.com, John Whittle, and we'll get an in-depth preview of Gamecock baseball, men's basketball, and we'll talk some Gamecock football as well. Gamecocks and Aggies kicking it off at 11 a.m. local time in College Station on Saturday. I will be there and certainly will have my thoughts on Sunday morning in the Morning After podcast. All right. The South Carolina Mr. Football finalists have been announced earlier this morning. Gamecock commitment and 5-star offensive tackle Josiah Thompson, one of 5 finalists for that award, along with Zion Dobson from Hampton County, Avery McFadden from Hillcrest, Turbo Richard, a running back who's committed to Boston College at Northwestern High School in Rock Hill, and Watson Young of Daniel. Gamecock spoke with another running back in state last night, and that is Midland Valley's Trayvon Dunbar, 5'10", 200 pounds. He's rushed for over 1,900 yards this season and has the attention of Montario Hardesty, Dowell Loggins, Shane Beamer, and the offensive staff. I do think the Gamecocks are going to go all the way down the road, the beaten path, with Daniel Hill of Meridian, Mississippi, or at least until they have been told he's not coming to South Carolina. Earlier this week, after a visit to Tuscaloosa, the Oracle Steve Wiltfong of 24/7 Sports crystal-balled Hill to South Carolina back in August. On the eve of his announcement, it looked like Hill would choose the Gamecocks. It is a situation where the dad who played at Mississippi State wants his son to stay close to home and play at Alabama. And look, as long as Nick Saban's going to be there, there's nothing wrong with that. It's only about an hour and a half across I-20 from Meridian to Tuscaloosa. But playing time, the Gamecocks still have the best story to tell, so we will see what happens there. Gamecocks also offered earlier this week former Bamberg Earhart standout and now Highland Community College in Kansas defensive tackle Jerome Simmons, 6'4", 333 pounds. He's a May graduate. Georgia's also offered him, along with about 73,000 other defensive linemen that they have committed. And so we'll see what happens there. But, he could sign in December, but he will not be a mid-year enrollee. He will graduate in May. Gamecocks need all the help they can get on the interior line. I think they have a pretty good shot here. Gamecocks also have a great shot at turning 4-star defensive end who is currently committed to Southern Cal, Cameron Fountain, 6'6", 238, out of Booker T. Washington in Atlanta. He was at the South Carolina-Florida game. He should be setting up an official visit with the Gamecocks for December, and he should be back inside Williams-Brice Stadium again in November for an unofficial visit to one of those Final Four home games. Gamecocks continue to have open lines of communication with Strom Thurmond wide receiver Braylon Staley, who is a 4-star guy ranked as the number 2 or 3 prospect in the state, who is currently committed to Tennessee. I do think South Carolina has a legitimate shot at a flip here. And same goes for Marion defensive back Quaysheed Scott, 6', 185, ran 4.43 and ran a 4.38 shuttle and did a standing broad jump of 10 feet this summer in camp at South Carolina. He is currently committed to Little Stoopsy and Kentucky Wildcats. All right, tonight, men's basketball is set to host Garnet and Black Madness for the second straight year at Colonial Life Arena. The event is set to get underway at 7 p.m. The doors will open at 6:15. Fans will be introduced to the team and catch them in action for the first time with an intra-squad scrimmage. Lamont Paris will address the crowd after. There will also be 2 shooting competitions where students will partner up with players to win prizes. There will be a dunk contest to follow and an autograph session culminating the evening. Fans are encouraged to use the main entrance, and parking will be available around Colonial Life Arena. Men's team will get their season underway at November 6th at home against USC Upstate. And the Gamecocks will also host a charity exhibition against Wofford on November 1st at Colonial Life Arena. Tickets are $10 for general admission seats, and all proceeds from the event will go to the Maui Strong Fund. Of course, there was a devastating fires earlier that really took its toll on the good people of Maui on that island in Kentucky. All right, Gamecock women's basketball. They had their exhibition game to benefit cancer and to celebrate the life of Nikki McCrae Pinson on Sunday. Thanks to some good folks who live streamed, I got to watch a good bit of that. Gamecocks picked second by the media and the coaches in the SEC, behind defending national champion LSU, who the Gamecocks did take out behind the woodshed last year and beat by 27 points. Of course, Aaliyah Boston, Zia Cook, LA, and Bree Beal, and Victoria Saxton, that starting 5, they're all gone now. But Dawn Staley's got 9 McDonald's All-Americans on her team, and they played like it on Sunday. They started the game with a 21-0 run against Rutgers, led 51-14 at halftime on their way to a 100-55 win. Camila Cardoso led the way with 17 points on 8 of 11 from the field. She had 5 rebounds, 4 assists, and 1 block in just 19 minutes. Breezy Hall had 10 points in 21 minutes. She was 4 for 8 from the field and 2 of 4 from downtown. Chloe Kitts had a double-double with 10 points and 10 rebounds in 18 minutes. Kitts also had 3 blocks and 2 assists during that time, and she looks to have grown 1 or 2 inches. I think she's 6'3" or 6'4", and she was not afraid to go inside and mix it up. So she may end up being a stretch 4, but she does have positional versatility. Gamecock started Tahina Paopao, the 3-time All-Pac-12 transfer from Oregon, in the backcourt with Raven Johnson, Breezy Hall on the wing, Sanaya Fagan at power forward, and Cardoso at center. Fagan, 8 points in 15 minutes. She was 4 of 4 from the field. Raven Johnson, 7 points on 3 of 7, 1 of 2 from downtown, 4 rebounds and 9 assists and 4 steals in 20 minutes. And then off the bench, fantastic debut for Malaysia Fulwiley. No doubt she is just like Dawn Staley said, a generational talent. She had 16 points on 6 of 13, 4 of 9 from downtown, 6 rebounds and 5 assists and 3 steals in 25 minutes. 5 turnovers, 4 in the second half after the game was out of reach she, kind of let loose, got a little loose with the ball. But in the first half, Full Wiley had 11 points on 4 of 7, 3 of 5 from downtown, including making her first 3-point attempt of the night, and then a 30-foot buzzer beater to end the first half. And she was just outstanding in that first half. This is a deep team. I like what I saw from Sakima Walker in limited minutes. Sanaya Ja is going to have a role on this team. Ashlyn Watkins was the first player off the bench. She had 3 block shots, 4 points on 2 of 3 from the field. That was in the first half. Watkins finished with 6 points on 3 of 6, 6 rebounds and 4 block shots, only 1 turnover and 2 assists in 17 minutes. So I think you have your starting 5. I think you'll see Watkins, Full Wiley, Chloe Kitts, and Tessa Johnson. Those are probably your first 9. This team has quality depth, but they have more 3-point shot makers than they had a year ago, and that's why I think this team is capable of winning the Southeastern Conference, of winning the SEC tournament, which once again will be in Greenville, and being a number 1 seed in the NCAA tournament and making it the Final Four for what would be the 4th straight year. And if you make it to the Final Four, you definitely have a chance to win the national championship, because nobody was picking LSU last year, just like nobody picked South Carolina in 2017. Everybody thought it would be UConn or Stanford, and then Mississippi State upset UConn, and South Carolina took down Stanford and then beat Mississippi State to win their first national championship. Gamecocks won it again in 22 in Minneapolis, and that's where Tessa Johnson basically decided she wanted to be a Gamecock from the state of Minnesota, and I think she has a bright future ahead of her. This is a very talented team, and Gamecocks already have 1 commitment in point guard. Good Lord. Madison McDaniel from Bishop McNamara. She's considered the number 1 or 2 point guard in the country. Dawn Staley was in California earlier this week to visit with Kennedy Smith, the number 6 ranked player in the country, the number 1 wing player in the country, and probably the combination of great 3-point shooting and probably the best perimeter defender in the class makes her a high priority target. She visited South Carolina last weekend while the Gamecocks were in Missouri. Staley following up with a visit this week. This weekend, Joyce Edwards, who I think is the number 1 player in the country, is expected to make her official visit to South Carolina, and along with potentially McKinley Randolph, the number 21 ranked player according to ESPN, a 6-foot forward from Sierra Canyon High School. That's where Bronny James attended high school last year. And if I'm not mistaken, that might have been where Juju Watkins was as well. Gamecocks are in her top 5. She's the daughter of former Michigan State and NBA All-Star Zach Randolph. So that's one to watch. And then 2 days from now on Friday, perhaps the number 1 post player in the country, Adele Tack. She's ranked as high as number 6 overall by Prospects Nation. She will make her decision. Her top 4 was South Carolina, North Carolina, Louisville, and Georgia. She canceled an official visit to North Carolina, so I would say they could be out. I think it's South Carolina or Louisville here, but we can't discount Georgia. All right. Gamecock women will also start their regular season on November 6th. That will be in Paris on ESPN at 1 p.m. And they'll have their A-team there, Ryan Rucco, Rebecca Lobo, and Holly Rowe on the broadcast from Paris, a top 10 matchup with South Carolina and Notre Dame. All right, after this, I'll be back with John Whittle from thebigspur.com.
If you enjoy listening and watching the free Wednesday show, now live streaming on YouTube, and would love more Gamecock Pod daily, join our growing Gamecock family by becoming a monthly or annual subscriber. You'll be able to listen to the show every day of the week and listen to guests like J.C. Sherbert, Hale McGranahan, and John Whittle from thebigspur.com, Colin Taylor and Mike Uva from Gamecock Central, Emily Adams from the Greenville News, Ben Portnoy, Michael Lanana, and Jeremiah Holloway from GoGamecocks.com, Michael W. Bratton, the host of That SEC podcast, and many, many more. As a VIP subscriber, you can join or listen to the weekly live Zoom call with up to 100 of your favorite Gamecocks and friends. After the show is an unrecorded overtime segment where the real scoop gets dropped and discussed. It's like going down to your local pub or sports bar and having a conversation with your Gamecock friends about last week's football game, men's and women's basketball games, and Gamecock baseball. And of course, there's always recruiting to discuss. In addition to the weekly Zoom call, VIP subscribers get the most popular podcast, The Morning After, which is released every Sunday morning during football season, and more VIP perks are in the works. Follow Keith on Twitter at KAllset, or follow the show on Twitter at GamecockPod. Go to the top of the homepage and follow the link. If all else fails, go to patreon.com/GamecockPodDaily. Join now and get up to 3 months free off an annual VIP subscription. You will love it, guaranteed. Now, back to Gamecock Pod Live.
All right. To Gamecock Pod Live, our good friend John Whittle from thebigspur.com and the dean of Gamecock baseball coverage. John, it looks like a beautiful sunshiny day in the capital city today.
It is. It's a little chilly, but that's okay. I like that. It's you got the hoodie on, hoodie weather. So it's going to get back up to 85 here in a few days. And then a couple days later, be back down to 65. So that means that I'll be sick here in about a week.
Yeah, so we had just a few days of cool weather. And last Friday, I'm driving to my football game, and I look at my temperature gauge on the car, and it's 99 degrees. We set an all-time high for that date, which I guess was October 19th. Does that sound right?
Yeah, we'll go with that.
Yep. No, 20th, because Saturday was the 21st. So for the October the 20th, and it's a rainy week, and it may be a warm, rainy day on Saturday at Kyle Field and College Station, where I'll be going to see the Gamecocks. But hey, two former Gamecocks they punched their ticket to the World Series over the last 48 hours in Christian Walker and Jordan Montgomery. They'll be squaring off. The Texas Rangers defeated the Houston Astros, which did my soul good. And of course, since my Braves got bounced out in the first round, I didn't really care who won, but isn't it weird that like the top 5 records in Major League Baseball did not advance past their first playoff series? You had 3 110 teams, and I think they might have all gotten swept, or at least out in 4 games in a best of 5.
Yeah, it is odd. And I guess just a couple years into this playoff format, but that's happened. The upsets have happened both of those years. And, I think you probably need a little bit larger sample size before you go overhauling the playoff system again. But, I don't know what the right answer would be. Do you go back to just having the one wild card? I don't think Major League Baseball is going to be doing that. I think they like having more teams in playoffs and make a little more money. Do you expand it to 8 teams and not have first round buys? Do you let teams pick their opponents? I don't know what the answer is, but I think you probably need a little bit larger sample size before you say it's broken. So I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what comes of it. But I'm not a one game wild card guy or one game playoff guy. But I don't know. I guess we'll see what MLB comes up with.
I'll just say let's just go ahead and go to 8, and maybe you let the top 2 division winners pick who they want to play first. And that way everybody plays the same amount of games and nobody's sitting there playing intra-squad games or, probably going to see Champagne on the main stage and Destiny on Satellite 1, in their spare time, even though they're really there for the chicken wings. Well, that's a COVID thing, but anyway.
I don't hate the idea of going to 8 teams. I know we're not going down to 4. Like, I like the BCS. I don't want to get. I would rather not have a 4-team playoff. I don't particularly like the playoff. I know it's not going away, so I'm not going to sit here and try to fight for it. So I know we're not going back down to four teams in the playoffs. So maybe 8's the right answer. So I guess we'll figure out what MLB comes up with, and I'm sure people will complain about it, but that's okay. That's just part of it.
So what are your thoughts about the first season of the pitch clock and the changes? Unless you were really paying attention to the bases, I don't really think. It didn't look like big clown shoes, right, versus regular size shoes. I think some people thought it was going to be like that. But I kind of like the pitch clock. I don't mind the bases. I like not having the shift. I guess I'm just a traditionalist. And I still like having the ghost runner in regular season games. So teams, even though some of those games still keep going on, none of them turn into the Rick Naylor home run in the 17th inning at 3 a.m. at Fulton County Stadium.
Yeah. I kind of like all the rules. I don't watch a ton of MLB during the regular season. The season's just too long for me. I don't think the games mean enough. So I don't watch a ton of it. And part of the reason is because it's too long. But that being said, I caught myself watching a little bit more this year than usual because the games are quicker. And I feel like I'm a baseball guy in general. I mean, I really enjoy the sport and appreciate it, and all the little nuances and different things you can do, ways to manage and ways to perform and execute and all that stuff. Like I like baseball. I mean, I feel like I'm a baseball guy, but I didn't want to devote so much time to watching MLB games. And I started watching a little bit more this year, and maybe that'll keep growing because of the fact that the games are at such a good tempo, and the playoffs have been really good. I think the games have been good. I was pretty locked in on last night's game, for example, and I'm not going to sit here and say I've watched every pitch of every game, but when I've been able to get in front of a TV during the playoffs, I've had it on.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that was the point, is because games were taking too long, because even though he's my favorite player, Ronald Acuna Jr. and a bunch of guys like him, in between every pitch, step out of the box, retighten both batting gloves, all their body armor, even though they didn't swing at the previous pitch. I don't know what you need to, spend all that time doing. And so I like it. I like the limited throwovers. I do think it gives base stealers an advantage once a pitcher uses that, third throwover. But clearly the regular season doesn't really mean anything, because the Braves won 104 games and they should have been swept by the Phillies. I lived through Bobby Cox. And once Toronto got rid of him, they started winning. He only won once with a Hall of Fame rotation. And Brian Snitker is a Bobby Cox disciple. And so the Braves backed into the one they won with a bunch of trade deadline acquisition.
Oh, don't do that, Keith. Come on. Don't diminish the accomplishment. Come on. That's not what fans are supposed to do.
I'm not trying to diminish it.
Yes, you are. Don't crap on your team. They're good. It's hard to win.
It is hard to win. It is hard to win. But
everybody, that's what fans don't understand. Everybody tries to win. Like it happens in college football. It happens in professional baseball. It happens in every sport. Everybody tries to win. Like there aren't many Vanderbilt footballs out there, and even they're trying to win a little bit. So, it's difficult. It's difficult. I mean, I know that sounds like I'm saying settle for mediocrity. I'm not. Like, you try to position yourself to be in the best spot to be able to win championships, and some people to come through, and sometimes you just not. And those other teams are pretty good. I was surprised the Astros went down. Like those guys, and I don't like the Astros. I mean, I'm right there with you, but watching those guys, like those guys hit, man. Those guys hit. Yeah. Like they don't strike out. I don't know. They just figure out a way to get hard contact. Every one of them up and down the lineup. But sometimes you don't win. Like sometimes you just don't win. Anyway, I'm off my soapbox. Sorry. Go ahead. What were you saying about the Braves?
All right, so
about Tom Glavine and Steve Avery and Greg Maddux and David Justice and Ron Gant and Jeff Wowzer.
Yeah, all those guys. Fred McGriff.
Yeah, the crime dog.
Yeah, lot of dudes. Won.
Let's just see if we can go back and forth for an hour just naming random former Braves.
Dude, I can do it. And if you let me get on my phone, we went this summer to Truist Park, and on the main concourse, back behind home plate, they have a massive Braves Hall of Fame. It's very fan friendly. It's very accessible. And of course, a big tribute to Hank Aaron, but I mean, they have the list of everything. It was really cool for Addison to see. She's 10 years old. I grew up going to see the Braves. It was cool for me. Yeah.
Wow. I'm getting old.
My daughter's 10. Yeah. Hey, you blink and yeah, she's 10. But I did coach her up though to watch a few games of Ronald Acuna Jr. and we sat in right field, right behind him, one section over from the chop house, and he did hit 2 home runs in his first 2 at bats, and then in between he robbed the guy of a home run. So she thought I definitely knew what I was talking about when I said he's really good.
Yeah,
so
yes.
that was fun. But you talked about the Astros and the Rangers. Can you ever remember a 7-game series in which the visiting team won every game?
No, and that's not something I really can commit to memory. J.C. Sherbert could probably rattle off a half a dozen times because he knows stuff like that just off the cuff. But no, like that's crazy to be able to do, especially in baseball where home field is such a big deal. I mean, I guess really every sport, is such a big deal. But there's more to it than just the crowd behind you in baseball. I mean, you get to bat last. I mean, like that's a nice advantage to have. But anyway, so yeah, it's I was shocked by it, but it's a testament to I guess the mindset and the mentality that professional athletes have. Like college athletes, it's harder to adapt to being away from home and on the road. But when you're a professional, you've been through it so much and done it so much, and that's your livelihood. You've got to kind of block out all the distractions and know what you're going against and how you have to operate and all that kind of stuff. So, I guess it's not. I mean, but it doesn't happen. So ever hardly. So it was pretty cool to see. Pretty cool to see the Astros fans shut up at the end,
Yes.
of it, especially getting walloped at the end
of both games.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, I mean, here's the thing though. It was in the same state, and it's only like a 20-minute flight from Dallas to Houston or Houston to Dallas. So it's not like going from Houston to Anaheim or someplace like that, or to New York even. So maybe it's a lot different. I don't know. But did we count Corey Seager and make it 3 Gamecocks?
Why not? Why not?
Briefly, I can't remember if he ever played in the game or not.
Well, no, he signed right out of high school. So he with him, and I don't remember all the ins and outs of it exactly. What I do remember is that he set a really high number, and if he didn't get that number, he was going to come to school. And he saw what college did for his brother Kyle, who went to North Carolina and played under Chad Holbrook, and that family and Corey, loved Chad and trusted Chad, and he was the assistant coach here at South Carolina at the time. And instead of going to North Carolina, Corey decided to commit to South Carolina and set a price tag. I think it was close to $2 million for him to get to where he would sign and go pro, and he ended up getting whatever it was he asked for. Actually, I think it was a little bit more than what he asked for. And at the end of the day, like, he signed for that, and who can blame him? It's obviously worked really well for him. And tip of the cap to him. I had Corey was great to deal with as a recruit. Like, sometimes guys like that, they get quiet on you. I mean, you know how it is. Like, they get too busy or whatever. Every time I ever called him, sent him a text, went up to see him, always made great time for me. So really, really happy for him.
Well, that dude is very good at baseball, and he's worth every penny. And he signed a huge deal to leave the Dodgers to go to the Rangers. And
what's crazy is I remember, and I remember writing this too, but I would talk to scouts about him, and it was 50-50. And I would ask scouts too, like, what's the consensus? It's like, and they would be like, well, it's kind of split whether he could play shortstop or not, or whether he would have to move to third base. I'm like, I'm not that smart, but I'm looking over here and I think that guy can play shortstop.
Yeah.
And, I don't know, scouts see a big 6'4" guy like, in corner. I don't know, man. But yeah, he ended up being able to play shortstop.
Yeah, and he hits a bunch of long home runs.
Yeah,
and I mean, that guy, he puts a bat on the barrel of the bat on the ball. He can really drive it. He's impressive. All right, so Christian Walker. We got Jordan Montgomery. Tell us about your dealings with those guys and what you remember most about their careers at South Carolina.
Well, Jordan was interesting. Like he was a pretty late commitment to South Carolina, and there were some questions of whether or not he was good enough here to play here before he committed.
Right.
Like there were some coaches in state who didn't think that he was like South Carolina or Clemson good. They thought he was like Coastal Carolina, College of Charleston, and not to take anything away from those programs. Like Coastal's obviously won a World Series. Charleston's been to a couple super regionals. They're good baseball programs. But, we're talking ACC, SEC schools, and there was questions on whether – like I had one coach kind of poke fun at Holbrook to me for taking Jordan. And it's like, he might be all right. He's an in-state kid, probably low scholarship money. I mean, lefty who throws strikes, like that seems like a good take to me. And that ended up being true. And Jordan ended up being really good here as a freshman, and same with Christian Walker. But Christian Walker was a national recruit pretty much from the start, and Mark Calvey got him and did a tremendous job. I think it was Mark Calvey who got him committed. I know that there was some transition at the time, and Mark Calvey was very active in his recruitment. I'm not sure if he actually got the commitment, but he was very active in that process. And he's obviously still really good. I remember he was in a national home run derby right before or maybe it was during his senior year, and put on a good show, represented his state. Just a really, really good ball player from the second he stepped on campus. I do remember one interesting story about Christian is I do remember I think it was the very first fall scrimmage. It was the first fall scrimmage I saw, at least, of his freshman year. And he came in kind of as a corner infielder. They were going to try him at third base and potentially, but thought that he would probably ultimately be a first baseman, which was fine because he could hit. But they're like, okay, let's see if he can play third base. And it was the very first ground ball I saw him take in a game. Of course, he had plenty in and out, but in a game, in a scrimmage, very first ground ball I saw was a slow roller, and he came charging in on it and tried to make a play and just fell face first into the dirt. Like it was bad. Well, it's fall. It's fall. You can try these kind of things, but first base looks about what it is. And but credit to him, like he's gotten in great shape. He wasn't in bad shape at South Carolina, but he's gotten into great shape in pro ball. He's turned himself into a Gold Glove first baseman over there. He played some left field for the Diamondbacks for a while. Played some first base, but he's turned himself into a Gold Glove first baseman, and and he spends a lot of time here in the off season too. So he's in the program a good. And I haven't seen Jordan much. I'm not sure where he spends his off season, but I'm sure he's around here at least a little bit. I know he's a proud Sumter guy, but Christian Walker's definitely around here a ton. So it's great to see them having great success. And I didn't realize, and credit Kent Reichert for the research, but I didn't realize that there hadn't even been a Gamecock in the World Series since 2018. And that's when Jackie Bradley and Steve Pierce won it with the Red Sox, and Pierce was MVP of the World Series. Riley was the LCS MVP. Both won championships that year, but that was 18. We're now in 23, so it's been a minute since there's been a Gamecock in the World Series and guaranteed a champion this year.
Yeah, I mean, Montgomery was with the Yankees, and they thought they were going to help their playoff chances by trading him. And then eventually, I guess he got dealt to Texas, and lo and behold, they're in the World Series. So I'm just going to sit back and watch. So, like, my one Christian Walker memory, I think, was that Super Regional at Coastal. I think it was the first inning. He just hit a rocket shot out of there. And I was like, he didn't look that big, but he always swung a big stick. I have to admit, I didn't think the power numbers would translate over with the wooden bat. But like you said, he's really worked at his craft and gotten in great shape. And, he's a grown-ass man, and he hits the ball with power to all fields. I mean,
yeah, and he's not a huge guy. I mean, he's 6 foot, maybe 6'1". So he's not one of those big giant guys, but he's just one of those guys that you just call kind of a professional hitter. Like, he's just always kind of had that way about him. Always knows how to find the barrel, knows how to drive the baseball. So, there've been a few of those guys who have come through here. I mean, you look at a Max Schrock, maybe a Carlos Cortez. There have been guys who just have a real knack of being able to find barrel and get hits.
No doubt. So let's stick with baseball and let's switch and talk Gamecock baseball. What have been your general impressions of the team so far through this part of fall baseball?
Really encouraged offensively. I mean, kind of about what I thought they would be from an offensive standpoint. There have been some guys who have played really well and consistently. I mean, Cole Messina was hitting about 600 up until this past week, and he's going to take the rest of the fall off, at least from an offensive standpoint, while he's got a little hand thing going on. But I mean, he was hitting about 600 through 4 or 5 scrimmages. Pretty good. Petrie's been really good. The shortstop position, Lee Ellis, Will Tippett, both of those guys have been good. Tyler Causey's somebody who's shown out a bit at times from a power number standpoint. There have been a lot of encouraging guys offensively, and it's been pretty balanced overall. And then from a pitching standpoint, I mean, that's where the big question marks are, right? Like, you're trying to figure some things out, and you're trying to coach some guys up. And, it's the middle of October. They're halfway through scrimmages, halfway through team practice, but still a lot of time between now and the start of the season, the middle of February. And you want to see growth among guys. And, South Carolina's got some proven commodities who about what you're going to get from them. You want to see growth from those guys too, like Matthew Becker and Eli Jones. If they pitch the way they pitched last year, like, it's probably not a good enough pitching rotation. But if you take the growth they made from their freshman year to sophomore year and replicate that from their sophomore year to junior year, you've got a pair of very viable weekend starters who can compete with anybody in the SEC. So, I think those guys are coming along. Roman Kimball isn't throwing live yet, but I really think that he's gonna come back and be good. But in the transfer market this offseason, South Carolina didn't hit on a lot of their top transfer pitching targets. I mean, they just didn't. There's no way to sugarcoat that. So they went out and said, okay, we've got to go into this next tier of guys. Like, how do we want to handle that? And they went with guys like Tyler Dean and Drake Quinn and to a certain degree, Garrett Gainey, and said, okay, these guys have stuff, right? They've got some plus pitches. They've got some really good attributes, but there are things that they don't do well. And most of them are those strikes. And I've been kind of saying they took stuff over strikes with the hopes that they can coach them up and get them ready to go between now, when they got when they got to campus back in August, in the middle of February. And we'll see if that happens. Like, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that everybody that they took is going to be great, because I don't think they are. But if you get half of them to be able to give you some decent innings over the course of the season, I think you've done okay. Maybe Drake Quinn he had a .70 ERA at Marist, right? Like, that's not very good. 8.7 ERA is not very good anywhere. 8.7 ERA at Marist is very poor. But, he's out here throwing 96 with a 90-mile-an-hour cutter and a breaking ball. And you know what? If you can get him in the zone a little bit more, that stuff is hard to hit. And he's been in the zone a little bit more, just not consistently. Maybe he becomes more consistent and Tyler Dean doesn't. Tyler Dean's been in the zone a little bit more consistently, and that's good. His fastball's been up to 96 miles an hour. His slider's okay. It's good enough. It's workable to be a one inning reliever. Same with Garrett Gainey. It's more about figuring out, getting some guys coached up, figuring out who you can rely upon. I think they're on the right path to getting there. If South Carolina had to play, if the season started this weekend, I wouldn't feel great about the pitching staff. I'd feel okay about it and think that South Carolina can score enough runs to mitigate some of that okay. But there's a lot of time to coach those guys up and work with them. These aren't supposed to be finished products right now. Like, it's not a Ethan Petrie, who was a freshman All-American. It's not a Kennedy Jones, who put up the exact same numbers at UNC Greensboro 2 years in a row. These guys aren't polished products and aren't finished products. And, they're working with them to get them going and be able to contribute this year. And I think a lot of those guys are on the right path.
All right, so how do you feel about the additions to the coaching staff? Talk about that.
Yeah, Matt Williams is awesome. I'm not gonna lie. I've known Matt since he started his coaching career at Spartanburg Methodist back when he was, fresh out of college, just a pup. We're about the same age, and I've known him for a good while now, and he's worked his way up from Spartanburg Methodist all the way up to South Carolina. He's had a couple of different pit stops along the way, whether it's with the Padres doing scouting and throwing BP to hitters. Like, he's done a lot. He's done a lot. But he's kind of in his dream job right now, and not kind of. He is in his dream job. Like, he doesn't want to be a head coach. Like, pitching coach at South Carolina is what he wants to be. And I know that he's very passionate about this place and is going to put every bit of effort into being great here. And he's proven to be really good at his other stops, whether it's Liberty, UNC Wilmington, the Padres, wherever else. He's been really good. So, I think he's going to be great. He's a dynamite recruiter, works really hard in that. Joey Holcomb coming on when the NCAA expanded its coaching roster, so to speak, allowed for another full-time paid assistant. And Joey came down from Campbell, and he was helped build an offense that was one of the best in the country. We saw flashes of that here at Founders Park, last year in the regional. He didn't really have any connections with the current coaching staff. And, I think that really goes to show that Mark Kingston went out to try to hire the best guy that he could. Didn't go out and try to hire, one of his close buddies or something like that. He wanted to hire the best guy he could. And Joey brings some interesting things to the table, and they're doing some different things in terms of drill work. But him and Monty work well together. And, I think he's another great hire.
All right, good stuff. So defensively, John, what do you think is the plan for Ethan Petrie? Do you think they're going to keep him in the outfield? Could he play corner, infield, kind of set the defense as you see it for us?
Yeah, Ethan will stay in right field. It won't be third base. Like, I'm not going to completely rule out first base at some point in his career, but it's going to be right field for at least for the foreseeable future. He's not taking any ground balls anywhere or anything like that, and I think that's smart. I think that he profiles as a right fielder at the next level as well. He's not a polished product out there, but he's coming along. I think he's doing okay. So he's your right fielder. Kennedy Jones is your left fielder. Gavin Casas at first base. Parker Nolan, the Vandy transfer at second. Third base is Talmadge LaCroix, who I think we have a pretty good idea of what he's all about. He hasn't been particularly flashy in these scrimmages, but he's been real solid and real consistent. He's given good at bats. Been good defensively. He's playing some at second base as well. So I think he's done a nice job. Coleman obviously behind the plate. And then the two question marks are at shortstop and center field. Those are the two biggest positions that are up for grabs, and DH as well, depending on how some of the position battles shake out. That's when you start to kind of determine what the DH spot looks like. But it's Will Tippett or Lee Ellis at shortstop, and both of them are a little bit different, a little bit unique. And then there's four guys out there in center field, whether it's Evan Stone, Dylan Brewer, who we've seen around here for a while, or Austin Brenling or Blake Jackson. Those are two transfers from North Florida and Charlotte, respectively. And, all four of those guys have played well. At least as we sit here today, it's not like you're trying to just pick the best out of a bad bunch. Like, those guys have played really well for the most part. Evan Stone hit a home run in the scrimmage yesterday. He worked a ton this offseason with a guy named Tyler Krieger down in Atlanta, who works with several of the Braves players at a hitting lab called Maven Labs, down there right outside of Atlanta. And Evan spent a lot of time out there working with him. And Tyler's actually a former Clemson shortstop that Monty hooked him up with. Played several years of minor league ball, made it up to AAA, and dude's good. He's really good. He's helped out Evan and Carson Hornig. Carson spent some time down there in Atlanta over the summer too. But Evan's really revamped his swing and has been much better offensively. Dylan's been impressive too. Like, he's been, from a offensive standpoint, he's provided professional at bats. He hasn't struck out much. He's walked a ton. He's stolen bases. He's thrown out guys from the outfield. He's played really solid ball. I hit a double in the scrimmage yesterday as well. Austin Brenling is a little different. I mean, he'll drive the ball the other way. He'll split a gap for you from time to time, but he's a singles hitter, and then he'll steal second base. But that's the kind of player he is. And he'll go catch the ball for you out in center field. He doesn't have much of an arm, which is something to kind of keep an eye on, I guess. But that's kind of one of his minuses, so to speak. But Blake Jackson got off to a great start in the fall. He's kind of he had a good day yesterday too. But Blake Jackson was really making a lot of noise early on. Come back to the pack a little bit. But those four guys have done a really nice job. Will Tippett and Lee Ellis over there at short have both been good. Will's been more consistent. Lee's been a little more flashy at times. Will's a little bit better offensively. Lee's got probably a higher ceiling from an offensive standpoint. So while some of their traits are the same, they're different players in terms of how they're producing at the moment. So, there's decisions to be made there, but like we said, it's October 25th right now. I can't remember what day the first game is, but mid-February sometime. So a lot of time for that to sort itself out, but that's kind of where things stand at the moment.
All right, so talk to us about Kennedy Jones and how is his skill set translated over at South Carolina. I mean, does he look like a bona fide SEC outfielder? What kind of fall has he had?
Yeah, he's been fine. He's been fine. he's done okay offensively. I'm not going to sit here and tell you he's lit it up, whether it's extra base hits or just even overall batting average. He's just been okay. He hadn't gotten a ton of extra base hits so far. He's done okay in the outfield. Like he's a fine left fielder when you consider what you're going to get out of him from an offensive standpoint. You know, he's not going to win a Gold Glove like Christian Walker, but he'll be okay. You know, if the season were to start today, or say he was performing this way a month into, you look and say, okay, well, Blake Jackson's been really good. Do we want to try to give him a game over there and see what it looks like? But I'm not worried about Kennedy Jones right now. Like he's got credentials. He was at UNC Greensboro, but they've played a lot of really good teams, and he's produced against really good teams and really good players. We saw it 2 years ago as a freshman in his first series when he came in here and was hitting doubles left and right against the Gamecocks. So I'm not worried about him. I'm not going to lie to you and tell you he's been phenomenal, but he's a really good player who I expect to be really good here once the season rolls around. I'm going to yell at the dog real quick. So you talk. I'm going to put this on mute for just a second.
Okay. Well, great stuff there from John. I think maybe his dog had a different opinion at shortstop. I don't know. Maybe your dog has a dog in that hunt at shortstop, so to speak. All right, so last on baseball, and then I want to talk some men's basketball. I mean, it seems like, and I really thought, you know, with the additions, the coaching staff, with Monty Lee coming back, adding Matt Williams, adding the guy from NC who had been at NC State, right, and had worked with the state of North Carolina, this was going to be by far Mark Kingston's best recruiting staff, and this was going to be a staff that could get back to what Gamecock baseball has been, which is recruiting the area and the border states and other places and the junior colleges, but also in the state of South Carolina. What have you seen on the recruiting trail? I know there's been a string of commitments for 25, some for 24, and I know they're in on several big-time junior college players that they're waiting on. Yeah,
and that's a little bit different. You know, they have had a nice run of commitments here lately. Junior college, there's been a 24, there have been a few 25s. But, you know, a couple of things that they've kind of changed a little bit is one is hitting the junior college ranks hard. You know, they as we talked about earlier, the pitching portal summer wasn't very kind for the Gamecocks. And, you know, part of it's from an NIL standpoint, part of it's from a talent standpoint. You know, it wasn't very good, and you need pitchers. And, you know, so they have put more of an emphasis on the junior college ranks, because a lot of schools, including South Carolina prior till now, have been kind of bypassing the junior college players and looking more at and saving more of their resources for the portal. And, you know, that's left opportunities open with junior college players if you can find the right ones. And I'm not going to say nobody's recruiting them, because the guys that South Carolina has been recruiting have had offers from Mississippi State and from LSU and from Oklahoma and from TCU. And I mean, I don't know if you've looked, but those schools are usually pretty good. So, you know, they're going head to head and getting some guys who have been really good at their junior colleges and who other colleges are after. Brandon Clark is one that comes to mind. He's down at Manatee, or I think it's State College of Florida. Now they changed their name recently. Yeah. And he's a left-hander who started his career out at Alabama, didn't feel like it was going the right way, went to junior college, added some velocity to his fastball. He was up to 99 in their pro day the other day. does he come to college? Probably not, but maybe. I mean, maybe. So you get a few guys, and you hope to hit on some, but they've done a nice job in the junior college ranks here, and they're trying to land probably one more arm. Brendan Sweeney is a guy out of Oklahoma who they're trying to get right now. He's visited Oklahoma State already. He's got visits set up to Arkansas and Oklahoma, Texas and Oklahoma to round out his official visit tour, and we'll see what goes from there. I mentioned Arkansas. South Carolina got a commitment from Jackson Susie out of a junior college, and he was down to the Gamecocks and the Razorbacks. I mean, Arkansas is pretty good. Always have pretty good pitchers. I mean, they're recruiting the right guys. And another thing is they're trying to put an emphasis on size and high school kids from the pitching staff. And that was another thing that they kind of feel like is that most of South Carolina's good pitchers and SEC in general are pitchers who have come up through a program and not necessarily been transfer portal guys. There have certainly been some Noah Halls and some Paul Skeens and some Hurston Waldrops who have transferred into places and been really good. But there have been some flops too, whether it's Christian Little or whoever else. So they want to bring in more high school pitchers than what they've done here lately, and they're off to a good start with that. But they also want some bigger guys too. Now, that doesn't mean that all of these guys are going to be 6'5", 6'6", but more of them, a higher percentage of them are. They've recruited some 6'1" and 6'2" guys, but they're recruiting a lot of 6'5" and 6'6" guys to have some projection in there and develop them over time. So they've shifted some focuses a little bit and put a premium on some different things, and we'll see how well that serves them. But I think they're off to a really good start from a recruiting standpoint.
All right, let's transition to men's basketball. Lamont Paris, I think, was prepared for the media to pick him last, and he had his statistics out. And look, the SEC is really good in men's basketball. There's no denying that. But to me, just looking at it, I mean, this is at least to me, a much deeper roster, a much more talented roster across the board, and an older roster of guys. And they got some legitimate players, to me, that should make this a better team. And Colin Murray Boyles has really had himself a phenomenal senior year, reshaped his body. Doesn't even really look like the same kid that left to go to Utah. And so what are your thoughts on this men's basketball team?
Well, I think Lamont Paris certainly delivered a great line when he said, listen, we aren't trying to finish not last. Like, what a low bar that is. Not last. Finish not last. We're not trying to finish not last. We're trying to be really good. So, like, when I say some of these things, like, I don't want to give off the impression that South Carolina should shoot for not last and just try to finish in the bottom third of the league instead of 14th. Like, I mean, I think they have potential to be a little bit better than that, but it is a little bit interesting for me to see them pick last after not being last year when they've improved so much. And I think you look at what I haven't read every preseason article about South Carolina and, why different folks picked South Carolina 14th and whatnot. But it seems to me like the two biggest issues that I've seen that people have with South Carolina's program are the ability to protect the rim and athleticism on the wing. And, my question would be is, did South Carolina get worse protecting the rim than what they were last year? I mean, I don't think so. Like, I mean, who who left that's protecting the rim, or who protected the rim last year that is gonna hurt South Carolina? Like, nobody. Like, maybe Gigi. I mean, is he a rim protector? I don't know. I wouldn't classify him as that. But, Josh Gray is still there. He did a pretty good job of protecting the rim. Colin Murray-Boyles, he'll play some 5 this year. He got some really long arms. Like, he's not gonna be able to defend a Josh Gray, so to speak. But he'll be okay. But you didn't get markedly worse there. You didn't do great at it last year, but you didn't get worse. When you lose Gigi Jackson, you did lose some athleticism on the wing. Like, you replace Gigi Jackson with Miles Studi, and there's a different type of athleticism there. Like, even Gigi at the 4 and putting BJ Mack out there, like, there's definitely some changes in athleticism there. But, there's also some other things you can do from a defensive standpoint and an offensive standpoint, for that matter, that you feel okay about, and being able to make up for that loss of Gigi from an athleticism standpoint. So, yeah. I mean, those are the 2 things that I've seen jump out that are kind of the biggest knocks on the Gamecocks. But they've got 2 guys who hit 73s in the SEC last year. Like, two out of 8 guys who hit 73s. Like, that's pretty good, right? They got the number 1 assist. We're one of the top assist guys in the country from last year, 7th in the country in assists. Michi was fine with that too, and now he's playing off the ball. Miles Studi is a top shooter in the league. He's over there now. BJ Mack is going to present problems for defenses. Like, if they run a pick and roll, are you gonna switch, or what are you gonna do? You got to make a decision on what you're gonna do. Like, because BJ will stand out there behind the line and knock down a 3-point shot. I think that there's a lot that South Carolina can do with the players that they have to be able to win more games this year than anybody's giving them credit for. And, like I said, 14th or being 13th, being not 14th isn't the goal. It's certainly to be in contention for the postseason in some capacity. And, I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility for South Carolina to be able to do that. And, there's also a schedule element to this. Like, South Carolina's got a much, much easier schedule, much more friendly schedule this time around. Now, that does 2 things. That's going to hurt your RPI later on down the road. And that's gonna be a challenge from a metrics and numbers standpoint. But you know what? If you win a lot of games early and you start feeling good about yourself and older guys, maybe some things can happen when you get into league play. So we'll see how that all plays out. But it's certainly it's a team I'm really intrigued by, for sure.
I mean, I agree. I really like Talon Cooper, Miles Studi, BJ Mack, obviously Colin Murray-Boyles as a freshman. I think, we saw not so much when he was handling the ball, but off the ball, Jacoby Wright really became a very dependable knockdown shooter and in the mid-range as well last year during SEC play. And I'm also intrigued to see the leap that Zachary Davis has made, because he physically wasn't ready last year, coming from a 1A school. And, now he's had over a year at the training table and nutrition and strength and conditioning. And he's a very skilled, talented guy. And, evidently Morris, we'll just call him Morris from Finland. He has looked good on that trip. And, I think they feel pretty good about Stephen Clark as well. And I think it's a good thing I hadn't even mentioned the BBV yet. And I guess the biggest thing, and I know they're going slow with his rehab from that Achilles, but what's the latest, and what kind of role do you think Abrima Deba has on this team?
Well, that's a great question because you're going to see a story on the BigSpur.com here later today about Evo, they call him. But yeah, I mean, to share, I'm not going to not answer your question. But he's coming along from the Achilles injury. And Lamont Paris, when I asked him about it recently, made it a point to say, like, this is probably the toughest injury to come back from as a basketball player.
No
you know,
doubt.
maybe it's an ACL for football. I don't know. But he said from a basketball standpoint, the Achilles is the toughest thing to come back from, which makes sense to me. And that's what he's trying to come back from. And it was not a smooth road to recovery. Like sometimes you have a surgery and, you know, it's just you just steadily get better. And that was not his path. He's had some difficulties from start to finish, but he's out there. He's competing. I don't know that he's going to ever be the kind of player he was pre-injury, but he's getting to be able to be competitive enough to have a role on this team. Maybe he becomes a starter at some point in his career because he'll have this year and one more if he wants him. Maybe not, but he'll be able to at least be a role player and contribute. He's a guy who the teammates love. He's a leader on the team from a vocal standpoint. He's a guy who does the right things off the court. I know that they're thrilled with the progress that he's made and encouraged and hopeful for what he could possibly be. I don't know that it would be real fair right now to try to put an expectation on him based on, you know, some of the things that I've been told in terms of how the recovery process is going and how difficult it is to get back on the court from those things. But I do feel good enough about saying like he's going to have some type of role on this team this year to where he can contribute on the court.
All right, what do you think about Stephen Clark and Morris from Finland? Evidently, he flashed. He's getting bigger. I know the weight and the size was kind of a concern for him, but appears to be a very skilled player that is adapting.
Yeah, with Clark, his versatility is his biggest deal. There's a chance he could start the first game at the center position, at that 5 spot. You know, him and Colin Murray-Boyles and Josh Gray, you know, they're all going to see minutes there at different times. And, Colin Murray-Boyles can play some 4 behind B.J. Mack. So can Stephen Clark. Clark can play some 3 in a pinch. I think he's probably more of a 4 or 5, but, you know, he can bring some versatility and play some 3 if needed. I think it'll be Miles Studi and Zach Davis there for the most part. But, you know, he's a great piece of the puzzle, and they've been really happy with him. Like, I don't know. I don't think that they recruited him thinking that he was going to be a starter. But it's not out of the question. It's not out of the question. I don't think that he's going to be an every game starter throughout the year. Maybe he starts out the season and they kind of help Colin Murray-Boyles along a little bit. But we'll see how that kind of evolves over the course of time. But, you know, he's somebody who they're very, very happy with. And Morris, I think it's Ugasuk. I think that's how you say it. I need to double check on that. But, you know, we had an open practice for media, at least partially open. We weren't there the whole time, but we were there for probably 30 or 45 minutes. And it was his first day. And he was competitive. Like he was, especially on the defensive end. He gave Michi Johnson, especially in Talon Cooper, some too, like all that they wanted in practice that day. And I was really impressed. And he has done a nice job of taking to the weight room and getting a little bit bigger and stronger from a physicality standpoint. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you that he's a definite redshirt. He's come a long way in a short time, and he's a really, really talented player. And in fact, if you made me tell you right now on October 25th, does he redshirt, does he play, I would say he probably plays instead of redshirt. So he's done a really nice job, and they're really, really happy and encouraged with his progress and the direction he's going.
So provided everybody stays healthy, what does a successful season for Gamecock basketball look like in year 2 for Lamont Paris?
Undefeated national champion. I mean, that'd be the most successful, right? No, I mean, here's the thing about it. Like we talked about how they were trying to bring in experienced players and talented guys who can be much more competitive than last year. But when you have a bunch of older, experienced players, like, you want to go to the tournament, like, they don't have much time left, right? Like Talon Cooper, BJ Mack, Stephen Clark, they don't have another year. I'm not going to sit here and say like it's a realistic opportunity to make the NCAA tournament. Like that's not something I'm going to project. I mean, heck, South Carolina was picked last in the SEC. Like, if I'm going to sit here and tell you that they should make the NCAA tournament, like, people are going to think I'm nuts. But I don't think it's 100% out of the question. And I think that you should have a goal of making the postseason in some capacity. Like, I don't think the NIT should be a completely unrealistic goal for this team. You've got a bunch of guys who have been around the block. You've got guys who have produced at the SEC level and who seem like they've gotten better. You brought in guys who were really good players from out of the program who can be helpful in this program and make it shouldn't be hard for Talon Cooper to transition from Minnesota to South Carolina. It shouldn't be real difficult for BJ Mack to transfer to transition from Wofford to South Carolina. They've played a lot of high-level competition. He's played in a lot of really big games at Wofford. I'm not going to see South Carolina's an NCAA tournament team because I don't think they probably are. But would it shock me at the end of the day if they are? Like, if everything comes together right, it wouldn't completely shock me. But I think they'll be a competitive team and competing for a berth in the NIT. I'm not even going to guarantee an NIT berth, but I think that should be a very realistic goal and expectation.
I mean, I agree. I think that's making progress, right? Like, year 1 with all the guys that left, it wasn't going to be pretty. But with the transfers and the veteran players that you have, like Talon Cooper, like Miles Studi, who is an SEC player, BJ Mack, with some of the returning guys, and then, at least one very talented freshman. I think if they could make the NIT, I think that would be, I think that would show the fans at least some progress. And I think that would mean that there's probably some exciting basketball going on at the Colonial Life Arena that does not involve Dawn Staley's team.
Yeah, and I would agree with you. I would agree with you. And, you lose several key pieces after this year, but there's a chance you get Michi Johnson back. I mean, I don't think it's a definite that you get Michi Johnson back. It obviously will depend on the kind of year he has, but you can bring Michi Johnson back. You can bring Miles Studi back. You're going to bring Colin Murray Boyles back. I mean, you are going to bring back some pieces as well, but BJ Mack came here to compete for the postseason, and same with Talon Cooper. And, it's I think that this team is capable enough to compete for a postseason spot. So, but yes, it would get to that would provide some encouragement going forward, and it'll show progress too, right? Like, there'll be a better story to sell on the recruiting trail next year, and I thought Lamont did a nice job of getting some of these guys to transfer in this year, going against some really good programs. I mean, they beat out Arkansas for Studi. They beat out Alabama for Mac. They were going against good teams and beating them for some guys. So, next year, if you make the postseason, it's an even better story to sell.
No doubt about it. So, John, the football season's more than halfway over. The Gamecocks are 2-5 and are 14-point underdogs. November, they don't have to leave the friendly confines of Williams-Brice Stadium. Is there I'm not going to ask you, is there a chance? Because as we all know from Dumb and Dumber, there's always a chance. What has to go right for Shane Beamer and the Gamecocks in November to finish what's up until this point has to be labeled as a disappointing season? That's not all just because of the play. I mean, there have been a lot of injuries that have resulted into that. Like, we're all excited that Xavier Legette, playing his way into a first or second day NFL draft pick. But, geez, how much better could Spencer Rattler be playing if Juice Wells would have been healthy all year? And Jalen Nichols was at left tackle protecting his blind side. And, obviously there's a number of issues on defense, lack of depth being the biggest. But just your thoughts on what has to happen for them to kind of turn it around a little bit in November.
It'd be helpful to get AJ Cann and Melvin Ingram and Brandon Shell and Jadeveon Clowney. Just add those four pieces to the respective lines of scrimmage, and I think you're back to being okay. Apart from that, it's going to be a real challenge to win any more games. And that's not to say that South Carolina is going to win no more games, because I don't think that's true. In fact, I don't know. I'm an optimist and glass half full guy, Keith. Like, y'all know me by now. Like, I'll sit here and tell you that I think South Carolina will probably finish 6-6, even with knowing what's in store for this weekend, because it ain't going to be pretty this weekend. It's going to be ugly. It's going to be ugly this weekend, as ugly as last weekend at least. But the next four matchups are a little better. Jacksonville State's not going to be easy. We saw that the Athletic ranked Jacksonville State ahead of South Carolina, this past week, and they're 1 through 133 or however many teams it is in their rankings. I think it was 63 to 68, something like that. It ain't going to be easy, but South Carolina should be able to win that one at home. South Carolina should be able to beat Vanderbilt at home. We'll see what Kentucky looks like after they play Tennessee and Alabama here in the next couple of weeks. I'm never sold on Kentucky, I guess. So maybe that's just a personal problem. But, if South Carolina gets a little feel good in them those next 2 weeks, again, in those first two home games, and, maybe that springboards them to playing a little bit better those last 2 weeks against Kentucky and Clemson, who are both very, beatable. We'll say beatable. And that's not me saying that South Carolina is a good team or a great team or, whatever else. But I do think that there's opportunity there. But for it to happen, like, you've got to get a little bit healthier on the offensive line. Like, Tree Babalade and Trevon Barr questionable. Like, those guys have to come back and play well. There's no cure. There's no cure for cancer at this point. Like, there's no magic potion. You just have to have some guys healthy and playing a little bit better. And South Carolina's got to bring some guys back and have some guys play a little bit better. And the defense is going to be what it's going to be. And turnovers are a luck thing, but Clayton White's defenses have been good in the past about turning teams over, and maybe some more luck will happen, so to speak. But some guys have to tidy some things up and clean some things up over there to at least play respectably enough to be able to compete on that side of the ball. And I think there's enough talent over there to be better than what they have been. Maybe they are bottom third of the league in talent and on defense, which I don't think is true. But even if they are, they're not last in the SEC from a defensive standpoint, from a talent standpoint. They have one guy who's hurt. They're fine over there. They're fine. They got to play better. They got to coach better, and they've got to be put in positions to be successful. And they haven't really been. And when they have been, they haven't made enough plays. I said after the Florida game, I think that a lot of the issues for South Carolina defensively have been a coaching thing. I thought Florida game, the players left a lot out on the field that they could have done better, and, need to find the right balance. Some of the staff needs to coach a little bit better. Players need to play a little bit better, need to be put in positions to be more successful. They're still trying things. They're still trying. Maybe they'll hit on the right. Maybe they'll hit here soon. But it's not very encouraging as we sit here right now. Certainly not for this weekend. But maybe things will look a little bit different against Jacksonville State.
I just think that Florida game is the game you can really circle that's going to come back to haunt them, because if you would have just held on there, right, and made one adjustment so Ricky Pearsall doesn't have a career day and Graham Mertz doesn't have a career day throwing to him, that gets you to 3 wins. And then, barring a major upset this Saturday, it is an 11 a.m. local time start at Kyle Field. That's the same start where Perry Orth had his 66-yard run that I missed. I still saw half of it, and I went to the bathroom right before the play started. It was literally the longest 66-yard run in the history of college football because it was just so wide open.
I love Perry to death. He just finished catching his breath from that run.
Yeah, he has.
I'm just kidding. Perry's my guy. I love that dude.
No doubt. Then you wouldn't have to run the table in November. You just need 3 wins. And the most Shane Beamer thing would be to be 2-6 going into November and win out and go 6-6 and go to a bowl game and win it. That'd be like the most Shane Beamer thing, because, I'm not calling it Lady Luck, but he's found a way. Let's face it, I wasn't the only one that was throwing dirt on this team last year after that game in the swamp. After consecutive games of laying an egg at home against Missouri after you beat Kentucky and A&M, and then going to Florida and being completely embarrassed, nobody thought they were going to beat 2 teams bound probably for the college football playoff, and they did. And so it could happen, but I just think that Florida game is going to be the one that's going to cost them. And so somehow, some way, if they don't make it to 6-6, if I set the over-under at 2 coaching changes, would you go over, under, or push?
In terms of just being probably straight let go, I would probably push. There might be other transition on the staff in the offseason. It's a little bit too early to start hearing those rumblings right now as we sit here end of October, because coaches right now are still focused mainly on getting their seasons right and trying to be better or make this season as good as possible. Now, that's always kind of the chief goal, but the deeper into the season you get, the more things can change a little bit, and guys are kind of peering around a little bit and having some phone calls maybe a little bit. But right now is really the focus for really every coach out there beyond just South Carolina of all right, how do we make this team as good as possible this year? So we'll see. I mean, there's still 5 games left to kind of figure some of that stuff out. But you know, as we sit here today and how you kind of figure the season is going to finish, I think there'll probably be a couple of coaching staff changes, and you know, but maybe not. Maybe there'll be more than a couple. 2-10 would prompt a lot more than 6-6, and you know, I don't think I don't think 2-10 is going to happen. I'm hopeful that 6-6 happens for 1,000 different reasons.
Yes.
Mainly because I'm tired of the Big Spur melting down. I posted right before I got on this on this Zoom call that some different ways to filter out some of the riffraff in terms of how to ignore people and how to find staff posts and that kind of thing. And it goes both ways. Like, some people are tired of hearing the negativity, and then some people are very positive about everything, and that's not the right solution either. And some folks who want to whine don't want to see sunshine. So, you know, it works both ways. But, you know, I'm at my most peaceful when the message board is at least somewhat peaceful, and I would like to see some wins here at the end of the year to make a few more folks smile and be a little bit happier.
I do think there are positives, right? Like, I think Spencer Rattler's having a phenomenal season. He's still completing about 71% of his passes. Xavier Legette's had a great year. And I think Shane Beamer's right. I don't think the moment has been too big for the freshman, even though Tyshawn Russell did drop that touchdown pass where he would have walked in. He's clearly got talent. You know, Nicholas Harbor probably needs a smaller helmet. Okay. When you fall down and your helmet pops off that easy, it's probably too big. Okay. The equipment guy they need to refit him for a little tighter helmet, you know, but certainly he's playing better. Mario Anderson, Tree Babalade, Trevon Ball, Jalen Kilgore on defense up until last week was leading the team in tackles. I think when you put Nick Emanwari and DQ Smith in positions that highlights their talent and don't ask them to do things they can't do, I think they've played extremely well. And so is TJ Sanders. And South Carolina just flipped Jalewis Solomon from Auburn, and on paper, they do have an outstanding recruiting class that is going to help them be even better next year. And so, and there's this guy that wears the goggles that's sitting behind Spencer Rattler learning that is probably going to be really good down the line. And so I do think let's just not accentuate the negatives. There are some positives from this season. Dowell Loggins is clearly a major upgrade at offensive coordinator and as a quarterback coach. Spencer Rattler's look like a different player, and I do think the young players should give fans hope for the future.
Yeah, I think there's been a lot of individual growth from guys. I mean, a lot of the guys you mentioned. I mean, I think Debo Williams has grown some. Like, I didn't think he could make any plays last year. Maybe I'm skewing a little bit, you know, what he was last year and what he is this year. But I was kind of not horrified, but I was really, really skittish about what I was going to see out of him this year. But but like you said, there've been growth in a lot of individual guys. Only it hadn't been a whole lot of team growth and unit growth. Like, I don't think the linebackers are any better this year than last year as a group. When you look at their production, I think they've made some bigger plays. I think they've missed some plays that have really cost this team. And, that was kind of my biggest position coming into this year, was that linebacker group, thinking, you were kind of steady Eddie with Sherrod Green and Brad Johnson, and they do some things okay, and they were short in some ways. Thought the ceiling was tremendous for Stone Blanton and Debo Williams, but the floor was much lower, and they've played a lot closer to the floor than the ceiling. And, that's been a big reason why this team hasn't been as good. But when you're last in the SEC and everything from on a defensive standpoint, or everything that matters close to the bottom and everything that matters, like, it's not one position group. It's all 11, all 22 who are in the two deep. It's the coaches, it's the players, it's everybody when you perform that poorly over the course of 7 games. So I'm not singling out anybody, but I do think there's been some individual growth, especially on the offensive side of the football. And the thing that I think is most encouraging is the way Spencer Rattler has played and what that means for South Carolina from an offensive standpoint going forward, in terms of what Dowell Loggins can do, not only in play calling to accentuate his quarterback, but in growth in terms of helping get Lenora Sellers and whoever else behind him ready to go and play it at an SEC level.
So if you were a betting man, do we see Juice Wells again this year or ever in a Gamecock uniform?
Yes. I don't know whether it'll be this year or whether it'll be next year, but I think he plays again. If he's able to come back and put a couple of nice games on tape at the end of this year against some good competition, then, maybe he does enough to where he goes. But I kind of think he's back for 2024. But I don't think that he's played his last game in a South Carolina uniform.
All right, John, I can't thank you enough for being with us. Are you making the trip to College Station?
No, I'm going to let Hale and Alex handle that one. I'll hang out around here, get some things done around Columbia to help those guys out. Baseball team's got a couple of scrimmages. Soccer team has a big match on Friday. Basketball team, I think I'm right on this, scrimmages on Sunday against I think that's later next week. But there's enough going on around here where I'll let Hale and Alex handle the football stuff, and I'll keep things going around here from an other sports standpoint, and keeping my fingers kind of in the mix a little bit with the football things.
All right. Well, hey, great stuff as always. Enjoy the sunshine and the rest of the day, and hopefully you've I know when you put your foot down on the message board, people fall in line, and so hopefully that will be the case. Thanks so much, and we'll look forward to catching up with you again down the road.
Absolutely. Appreciate you having me.
All right. I'll be right back after this commercial message.
If you enjoy listening and watching the free Wednesday show, now live streaming on YouTube, and would love more Gamecock Pod daily, join our growing Gamecock family by becoming a monthly or annual subscriber. You'll be able to listen to the show every day of the week and listen to guests like J.C. Sherbert, Hale McGranahan, and John Whittle from thebigspur.com, Colin Taylor and Mike Uva from Gamecock Central, Emily Adams from the Greenville News, Ben Portnoy, Michael Lanana, and Jeremiah Holloway from GoGamecocks.com, Michael W. Bratton, the host of That SEC podcast, and many, many more. As a VIP subscriber, you can join or listen to the weekly live Zoom call with up to 100 of your favorite Gamecocks and friends. After the show is an unrecorded overtime segment where the real scoop gets dropped and discussed. It's like going down to your local pub or sports bar and having a conversation with your Gamecock friends about last week's football game, men's and women's basketball games, and Gamecock baseball. And of course, there's always recruiting to discuss. In addition to the weekly Zoom call, VIP subscribers get the most popular podcast, The Morning After, which is released every Sunday morning during football season, and more VIP perks are in the works. Follow Keith on Twitter @KAllset, or follow the show on Twitter @GamecockPod. Go to the top of the homepage and follow the link. If all else fails, go to patreon.com/GamecockPodDaily. Join now and get up to 3 months free off an annual VIP subscription. You will love it. Guaranteed. Now, back to Gamecock Pod Live.
All right. One note to end the show on. It looks as though Mr. Football from last year, freshman defensive tackle Xavier McLeod, has been dismissed from the South Carolina football program. He was not on the trip to Missouri. There were varying stories as to why not. I don't know if the door is open for a return or not. So we will have to wait and see on that. Special thanks to John Whittle for a tremendous interview today, and special thanks to BP Skinner Clothiers, located in the heart of the Vista at 1003 Gervais Street, for this beautiful Holderness and Bourne pullover. And I also have a fabulous polo by the same brand from BP Skinner Clothiers. And go by and check them out in the Vista for all your clothing needs. If stuff right off the rack just doesn't fit, go down to Brent Skinner. He will acquit you and equip you with a tremendous custom-made wardrobe fit just right, just for you. I urge you to support this Gamecock-owned and operated business. So that is going to be a wrap for today's show. Tomorrow I will be back with Emily Adams from the Greenville News, and then we will end the week with our Football Friday show as the Gamecocks get ready to head to College Station. Could be rainy on Saturday, and I'm going to be there. So this is Keith Allsep saying God bless, go Gamecocks, and God protect our troops. Until next time, I am out of here.